Tired at this point in the tour, you have a perfect. Across from me is an aerial view of the estate, and on that side is a picture of Mrs. Winchester. Please do stay within the roped areas and on the carpeting. Purchased from the Tiffany Glass Company of New York. And that includes the, we're going to be hearing a lot about that number 13 as we go through the house. It was Mrs. Winchester's favorite number. Now we're in the original hayloft, but Mrs. Winchester also built around it, so it became another storeroom. Now this 13th bathroom is actually one of the most modern rooms in the house. It was wired for electricity, and it was plumbed for indoor plumbing. Now this was very rare back in the late 1800s to have a farmhouse that had both electric. And the psychic told her that the spirits of all those killed by the Winchester rifle took her family from her, and if she didn't want to suffer the same fate, she would have to move, she'd have to buy an unfinished house, start building, build for the rest of her life, and never finish. Then she'd have eternal life. So in 1884, she moved 3 miles west of San Jose, bought an 8-room unfinished farmhouse, hired 13 carpenters, and started building. She built 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, for the next 38 years. Because I'd like you, the last people. Okay. Would somebody close that door, please? This is the seance room where Mrs. Winchester would come every night to talk to the spirits. She also received her construction plans from them. Now, what she did is she had a scrap of paper, something to write on. She'd take this information down. The next morning, she'd give them to her foreman. He'd pass it on to the workers, and they would build according to those plans the next day. Now, Mrs. Winchester was the only person that ever came into this room. She had the only key. She even had bars built on the side windows there to keep intruders out. If we look at those 2 center windows on that wall, Mrs. Winchester could open those so she could look down on the room below. Then she could see and hear what her servants were doing and saying. She was a rather suspicious person. She wanted to know what was going on all the time. Now, an interesting feature of this room is there is 1 entrance and there are 3 exits. Now, the first exit is the door you came in. The second exit is the door right next to it. But if you opened that door and stepped out, you'd drop 8 feet down into a sink. The third exit is the door right here. Now, this is a very interesting door. I'd like you to look at the back of this door, because you'll see how plain it is. There are no hooks, no handles, no doorknobs. So if a person were to leave this room and the door closed, they couldn't get back in. Now this is going to be our exit for today. Who wants to go first? This was the Great San Francisco earthquake. And if you remember, I said the top 3 stories fell over. The debris hit right here. This was a fireplace. And the weight of all that debris dropped that fireplace down to the first floor. That made this wall shift to the right. You can see the raised headers above the doorway there. So at the time, this door was closed, and it got pinned shut. Now, all of the workers got out. They took a head count. They found that everyone was there except for one person. And that was Mrs. Winchester. So they began their search. They finally found her here. But because the door was jammed, it took a crowbar to open it up. This is the door, and there's your crowbar mark. Now, we had an earthquake, and that registered 7.1 on the Richter scale. We count 13 wooden panels and all the rest. Now I'd like to take you into the room with the largest and the smallest cupboards. Now, the room you were looking at before coming. Goes 52 skylights, 47 fireplaces, 40 bedrooms, 40 staircases, 13 bathrooms, 6 kitchens, 3 elevators, 2 basements, and 1 shower.